I don't know if you remember where you were when you heard about the earthquake in Haiti, but I remember well. I also remember a spring day in 1987 when I found myself flat on my face in a small church in South Carolina, right above Clemson, where my husband was in graduate school, laying flat on my face saying, I don't know how to do this thing you're calling me to do, Lord, but here I am. Send me. I could remember that as if it were yesterday. I think that this must have been a moment like that for Isaiah. Something like that, where in the presence of the holy, in the midst of a wonder and the awe of that situation, he was driven to his knees. He was driven there so deeply and so profoundly that he confessed, we don't even know to what. He confessed, woe is me, I'm a man with unclean lips. Not only me, the people that I'm in community with are unclean. Well, again, another strange image. One of the seraphs, one of the angels then, as quickly as he confessed, found her or his way to the fire, plucked out a coal with some tongs and took it right up to Isaiah's lips and just cauterized him, cleaned him up, fit them for the service that was before him. It might be a strange image to us, but if we understand about anything about fire as a purifier, well, it's not such a strange image. Then and now we see fire as a symbol of purity. And the mission that Isaiah had before him, he needed a little bit of cleaning up and cauterization and preparation. Probably to me, though, the most curious part of this whole story is the question that the enthroned Lord, high and mighty, stooped down to ask Isaiah. It's the first time the Lord speaks in the whole passage. And he says, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Now, folks, think about it. It's a loaded question. He's the only one in the room. We've done that. Annie Laurie can drive now. I find myself finding all kinds of little things that she could do. Oh, wonder who would like to go to the grocery store for us? Now, that kind of question. Whom can I send and who will go for us? Well, first of all, where are we going and what are we doing? And secondly, have you ever noticed this? Who is the us? Have you ever noticed that? Who will go for us? Some scholars and many avid readers of Scripture will tell you that this us, and in verse 3, the reference to holy, 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 are proof positive of one of the great doctrines of the Christian faith. And what is that? The doctrine of what? The Trinity. It's an interesting thought. Who will go for us? I don't know if you have ever been to a Pentecostal prayer meeting, but I've been to a couple of those in my day. And I've sung and danced and shouted with the rest of them. I know that comes by surprise to you, but I have. And some of us may say, oh, Isaiah was just in the midst of a religious frenzy. He was dazed in the midst of all of this stuff that was happening. He didn't know what he was doing, because did you see the next thing that he did when the Lord asked, who will go for us? Pick me, he said, here I am, I'm ready. Send me, I'm willing. I wonder if he knew the task that lay before him. If you'll look ahead at your scripture in verses 9 through 13, you could see the strange message that God called him to give. Again, to a hard-hearted people who didn't really want to listen much to anything a prophet had to say. If he had known what was in that job description first and in his sermon script, I don't know if he would have been so quick to have said, pick me, pick me. You found yourself in that place. How many of us get all excited about something and then after the fact, we discover another truth? Like we left an old job to begin anew and thought the grass was greener on the other side. Many of you remember what it was like when you first talked about getting pregnant and having a baby, and you get that precious baby here and everything's fine and wonderful, and then you know what? You know what, Jason and Amanda? They grow up and when they start talking, everything changes. And their dependence on you goes right out the window. Life is not always the way we imagine it to be. Isaiah didn't know what he was in for. You know, sometimes we think that if we leave one relationship for a new and more exciting one, that things will be much greater than we could have ever imagined. Things are not always as they seem to be. Isaiah's sermon that he had to deliver is another sermon for another day, but it's interesting. The calls that before us are not usually easy. Well, so what? What does any of this have to do with us? Isaiah, here we are in the middle of East Tennessee in the 21st century. What does this have to say to how we can get up in the morning and go to work and relate to our friends and compatriots there, or how we relate to family members or those that we're trying to develop relationships with? In all my years of pastoring, I haven't come across anyone who had this kind of unbelievable encounter with the holy. But I've come across plenty of people in my ministry who have had some kind of encounter with the holy. Oh, it may not have the temple and robes and seraphs, but some of the most joyful experiences of my life are to sit with people and hear them talk about where, man, I need my crash helmet when I come to worship, or when I sit in the prayer chapel, or whenever I sit in my prayer corner, because God shows up. For me, this text and its meaning for us today could be about a lot of things. But for me, most of all today, it's about imagining together the defining moments in our life that have shaped us and formed us and continue to do that, even as this moment surely must have for Isaiah. We all know what those moments are. There are moments in each of our lives when time just seems to stand still. That everything that was before that moment and after that moment pales because of that moment. Everything then becomes measured by that. Jason and Amanda, you're an easy study because you're sitting here, but life will never be the same. You know it. But it's a good kind of knowing. For our nation, September 11th was a day like that. 9/11 will forever be emblazoned on our hearts and our minds. Imagine for our ancestors living during the enigmatic and oxymoronic Civil War, what a defining moment that was for them. Or on the lighter side, what a defining moment it was for the world when Henry Ford got really smart and developed the automobile, or Alexander Graham Bell did his thing with the telephone, and boy, we just keep advancing and advancing there. For those of you who are space buffs and who appreciate the galaxies, surely Apollo 11 and Neil Armstrong's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind was one of those defining moments.